Do you know what my job description is? I'm in acquisitions. I look up and I catch what falls out of the sky.
What's on the ship?
Did you see anything unusual?
It's above our pay grade.
Do I get a cookie now?
You have found the film board from The Next Reel on rashpixel.fm. We spoil movies. On tonight's show, we all went out and got into the sights of the Predator. This is the new evolution of the original Schwarzenegger sci-fi action horror hybrid from all the way back in 1987. I'm so excited to hunt this one down with our motley crew of mercs. Let's meet our gang. Say something clever, Steve Sarmento.
Something clever, Steve Sarmento.
Hello, Tommy Handsome.
Did that sound like the Predator at all?
No.
I have not been practicing.
No.
Okay. Okay, I'll work on it.
What do you got, Andy Nelson?
Hey, everybody.
That's much more understandable. Although there is a translator that you can use. I learned that in this movie. I am JJ, and before we get started, you can go find out everything important about this show and the Next Reel extended family of shows at thenextreel.com. There are great ways to join us and our vibrant movie community over there, and we want to continue this conversation with you. All right. New Predator, big Predator. New movie. What did you guys think of it? What are your initial thoughts, Andy?
Oh, starting it off with me. I'm a big fan of the first Predator film. I have never really found that any of the subsequent films really held any candle to that original film. And unfortunately, I felt the same about this one.
Oh, okay. So more in line with the failures.
That's me, yep.
Okay, Tommy, what did you think of it?
At first I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then a little bit later I was like, oh, okay. And then after a while I was like, all right. Does that help sum it up? Not really. It had me for a while, and I thought I met it on its level, and then it kept falling apart over and over again. And the last half an hour to 40 minutes I thought was an absolute disaster. So bad really... that it took away my enjoyment of the first part.
Yeah, that's and I want to talk about where those points were for you exactly, because I think there's some interesting turns and some interesting, not pacing, but it's an interesting pace for the whole thing. The whole sort of tempo of the film, it goes in a couple different scattered directions. Yep. So I want to talk about that with you. Okay, Steve, what were your thoughts on it?
It was an 80s action movie written by Shane Black. That's what I wanted. That's what I got. I love Shane Black. The way he's able to balance humor and storytelling and action. I went in not, having seen a lot of the previews. I've seen the first Predator. I saw the second one. I didn't see any of the Alien versus Predator. Oh, I did see was it like 2008 or 9 or whatever Predator, the other Predator that, with Adrian Brody. So I guess I've seen most of them. And for me, this just meant to be something specific, which was like 80s style, over the top action and cheesy comedy. And I loved it for that.
Oh, that's cool that you loved it. So what I'm getting from you is that it was like a period movie by Shane Black. And a period in a genre film, right? A genre period movie by Shane Black. And I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. And I think that's actually kind of contrary to what I took away from it was. I felt like it was a good movie. I thought going in, I felt it was good. And but it challenged me on something because that first Predator movie it's in my hallowed halls of like forever remembering the great movies of my youth, right? It was in 1987 and it was the first rated R movie that I saw. We've talked a lot about that in the run up to this show. But I really love it, and I really love what it was. And I found that in this movie, I felt there were some great homage pieces there that they were doing. But in general, the movie made me feel old. It made me feel like that they were trying to do something that had been done before and not doing it as well. And it made me feel like they were doing a lot of things that were sort of trying to be the new style of that, and that I didn't really like that. So I kind of had this like get off my lawn feeling about it. And and I'm reminded of the conversations we have on this show a lot, of the fact that we are not of a younger generation going to see this movie. We are not, it's rated R, so we are not, in our late teens, early 20s seeing this movie. But if you are of that age, I think you would really like this movie. I think it's really good for that group of people who don't have the rooted familiarity with what we emotionally thought about those original Predators. So I think it's a good movie, but it really didn't work for me in lots of different ways. And I think a lot of that is about its scattered tempo. And so I want to get into that too. And Steve, you talked about some of those movies, but I actually want to ask Andy first. It sounded like you've actually seen all of them. There's Predator 1, which you said 1987, right? And then the Predator 2 with Danny Glover came out in 1990. And then you have the Aliens versus Predator movies. Did you see those too, Andy?
Yes, Alien versus Predator and Alien versus Predator Requiem. Correct.
2004 and 2007. And
which is the one that takes place in a pyramid underground?
That's 2004.
Okay, that's the one I've seen. Got it. Yes.
Yep. Okay, you've seen that one. And then 2007, actually, you guys should know. Well, if you didn't know, I just read about it because I didn't see it. It takes place in Colorado, where they're going back to battle in Colorado. So that's kind of interesting too. And it's AVP Requiem. And now we have this, and then we had Predators, which Steve mentioned with Adrian Brody in 2010. And now we have this new The Predator movie coming out. I think so. Andy, you've seen all of them.
Right.
Do they all matter to this one? I had only seen I've seen clips of some of the others, but I had only seen all of that first Predator movie. So how important is what Shane Black is doing here from a story perspective and from a reference perspective is that whole series of movies from 87 all the way up to today?
I don't think it matters to have seen any of them other than maybe the first one, just to have a sense of the story. I think that they just kind of throw in some things in there, like when the military guys are talking about, well, back in 1987 and then in this year and then in this year,
sure,
as if they're trying to just tie that thread between everything. The only other thing that I pointed out to somebody on Patreon that really you need to know, and you don't really even need to know it, is that in Predators, they had introduced those like predator hunting dogs.
We'd seen those before. Got it.
And that was really, I think, the only other takeaway that is anywhere in any of the films. So, I don't think it matters.
It's interesting because I hadn't seen the others, but I knew that Predator 2, the Danny Glover one, takes place in LA. Right. That I had this sort of assumption that this movie, because it takes place in a city-ish kind of place, in non-jungle, after being in the jungle, I thought that it was trying to harken back into that idea of taking the aliens out and bringing them to a populated area, that kind of thing. But it sounds like that more of those points were just for reference and for fun than anything else. In my research about this, I went to the Wikipedia page, right? And it's really interesting to look at the Predator sort of canon going back and how they put those movies together. They don't actually consider the AVP movies, the Alien versus Predator movies, as part of this Predator canon. They only put the 4 movies now into that because an interesting piece about it is that the Alien versus Predator movies were created based on everyone seeing the Easter egg in Predator 2,
right,
where they had an alien skull in the ship when Danny Glover goes onto the ship.
Like a trophy.
So they see as a trophy. So they see that, and then there was so much fan fiction created about this, the conquest of space, right? We get that line from Sterling K. Brown in this movie that that these creatures had actually conquered space, and that's why they were these sports hunters. So there was all this fan fiction created, and there is legions of fan fiction about the different things that the Predators are doing and that the aliens are doing in this sort of active universe. And then they made those movies, so they aren't necessarily connected either in that way, which I find interesting too, because of where we're going with this movie now. For you guys that did see the Alien versus Predator movies, did they feel separate to you? Did they feel different?
They felt, it honestly just felt like mashup movies. You know, it's like Freddy versus Jason. It's just, let's bring these guys together and see what they do to each other. It felt kind of like fan fiction movies.
Interesting.
Just done by, all the parties who retain all the rights doing it together to make it happen. And to that end, I mean, they're fun, and entertaining, but also kind of just, forgettable.
It's sort of like it reminds me of, going way, way back and thinking of how, I guess is it United Artists or MGM, how they capitalized on the monster stories where they took Dracula and Frankenstein and put them together in all sorts of strange movies with Universal. And then like they integrated the Honeymooners at one point, and they made a movie where it's Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Honeymooner. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. There you go. So you know more about it than me, obviously. But the
I want to see the
one
one with the honeymooners. That sounds amazing.
Bang, zoom.
Yeah, exactly.
I bet if they could make money off of it, they would probably do that too. Absolutely. So, but I guess that's what I'm reminded of, is that kind of thing. When you're talking about that these movies kind of have that mashup feel to it too. Steve, you mentioned that this was so typically 80s. What were some of the 80s tropes that you were gathering out of it? What made you feel particularly 80s about this movie?
The music, for one. The score it felt like very 80s. Actually, a friend that I went and saw it with afterwards, it's like, wow, it was like they listened to Alan Silvestri's score for the original and said, let's emulate that to the best of our ability. But so many other things that just remind me of the loud, bombastic action movies of the 80s. You've got manly men being manly men. You've got to have, if you've got a female character, one-liners. If there's a female character, let's find a way to get her clothes off. Because she's got to get her clothes off to be decontaminated as there's a predator running amok. Although, no nudity here, but just, if you've got 15-year-olds, Olivia Munn's going to take her clothes off. They get all excited. Big guns, in the comedy throughout. I think what makes these action movies in the 80s for me, it was always that balance between there's heavy violence, but we have comedy underneath to stop it from becoming just this really like deadly serious, heavy, death and destruction. We've got some levity to lighten it up. And so just the interactions between the team that comes together on the bus and their rapport with each other, and just guys being guys and joking with each other and riling each other up. To me, it's very much out of the 80s. And you can talk about, the type of humor. It's very crude. It appeals to just the, basest levels of humor that's very juvenile, but it's still entertaining.
The problem with that, though, Steve, is that the original film was also from the 80s, but did not have nearly as much nonsensical humor as this one did. It actually was a solid action film that had some humor, but it didn't try to rely on the humor all the way through and turn it into this completely tonally deaf film that just was all over the map and never really focusing on the story that we were there for, which is really just more of the Predator.
But to me, that's Shane Black, though. If you look at, Monster Squad, and you look
there's a good one to look at.
Yes, to me, it reminds me a lot of that. And it's, Fred Decker wrote that with him, where to me, it's looking at things from a kid's point of view. And to me, that was an interesting part of this, of having, one of our characters of, a young child with, that's on the autism spectrum. And what are we saying about this character, and making that a heroic character for a group of perhaps movie viewers and fans out there that don't function well in society, and having almost a role model here of using their ability. So, not that you don't have to be the biggest, toughest guy to save the world in the monster movie. You can be that quiet kid.
Well, I think I like that we're talking about writing here, and I want to focus on that, because the key thing that Steve, you say this is a Shane Black movie, and what do we like about Shane Black's writing is that it can create an interesting dialogue and an interesting story around that dialogue in a clever way that has us literally probably every 5 minutes going, oh, that was a cool line, right? That's what we see with Shane Black, and then some of his tone in movies, but it has nothing to do with this sort of action thing that we've seen in the Predators previous. And who we're talking about putting him next to in this is John McTiernan. And if you look at his work, he wrote the original Predator. We're talking about Die Hard, and we're talking about, the Thomas Crown Affair, these things that are really focused on the action and the story that have great writing in association with it. So I kind of agree with you, Steve, to that point, but unfortunately it didn't work with this movie because for me, I was looking for that original thing. And this is kind of going back to my initial thoughts about the movie too. I think it's going to work for some people. I think that people that are going to go to just appreciate this kind of movie standalone are going to be happy with it. But it definitely isn't the action movies we grew up with.
Right. And also to that point, this speaks to just the world of franchises. And we're always talking about this, like when a new director gets to helm a film in a particular franchise, is it going to be kind of a studio dictated, we repeat what we've done in the past, or is it going to be that director allowed to do their own thing? And I know there have been a lot of back and forths as far as the opinions of Edgar Wright having to step back from Ant-Man and any sorts of things, like where a director with a clear vision is doing something in a franchise, then they're not allowed to. I mean, even going back to David Fincher with Alien 3, I think that's an interesting thing to also bring into this conversation.
To Andy's point and Steve's point and JJ, to everyone's point, is that I don't think that it's really seems like a Shane Black film. For me, the humor was not, at risk of jumping into something a little bit too detailed, but to have a character have Tourette's and to have that be a runner of jokes, that's the equivalent of my complaint last time with the Happy Time Murders having an a-hole says what? Like, this year starts with a 2. We're not still making these kind of baseline jokes anymore. Yeah. So I was really surprised. I don't think I saw a lot of good Shane Black in this with the writing.
Yeah, I felt his humor throughout was very dated humor. And I mean, maybe to Steve's point, he was trying to make an 80s action movie, but do we need an 80s action movie right now? No, I think we need an action film with smart writing. And that's what I went into expecting from Shane Black. And I was incredibly disappointed by what he delivered. It felt so like he's stuck in his head from the 80s trying to spit that same stuff out that might have worked when he was doing films in the past, but it certainly didn't work now.
So now you guys, I think Andy and Steve in particular, you guys did, you went and watched The Good Guys for the podcast, right?
Nice Guys.
And that is the Nice Guys. Thank you. And that is a period piece for the 70s, right?
Yes.
Is that correct? So do you, and that's Shane Black as well. So did you feel like some of the writing felt forced, dated in that way, in that film? Is there any sort of parallel we can draw between the writing for that movie and this movie?
I do feel that he at times ends up stuck in his own world. Like, I feel like he's always throwing in like some humor about homosexuality that nowadays just feels very tone deaf. There was some of that in that one, and I feel like he was trying to pull it off because it was in the 70s and it was an earlier era.
Sure.
And so, I mean, so I do think that he does stumble sometimes, but I did feel like in that film, in some of his other films that he had done, like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I feel like he was just sharper at putting a story
so
together.
Elevated. Yeah. The story and the dialogue is so sharper. It's like it veers into Aaron Sorkin one-liners and like power plays sometimes. And this movie, for me, had such little of that.
Yeah, well, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here too, but I another thing that made me feel really old was all of the cursing. There felt like there was a lot of unnecessary cursing, and I really love cursing, so I don't know why it bothered me so much. But they had the kid swearing too, and they had everybody, everybody was tossing off F-bombs as if they needed to highlight jokes, and that kind of goes with this concept of that they were just constantly shifting the tone, that dramatic things were being then watered down by a joke with a curse, that it felt schizophrenic as an audience member to figure out where it was going. I laughed at a number of the stuff because I was shocked, and it was, I actually found humor in some of that stuff, but it just felt, again, tone deaf or tone off for where they were trying to go with this movie.
Well, it felt like what Shane Black was doing the Happy Time Murders thing. He's like, let's throw a lot of swearing in there just to make it R, because he had been confirming over and over again how he was doing an R-rated movie, and PG-13 is for something that he said, weak people, I guess we'll say. he's very very adamant about it going to be an R film, and I feel like that's what he did to make it R. Even when he
there still is that censor, right? There's a certain number of F-bombs that you drop that make it R. That's still part of the MPAA rating thing,
as opposed to PG-13.
I think it's one.
Right.
Yeah,
PG-13 can have. Yeah,
you can have 1 to 2, and you can't use it in a sexual context.
Right.
Oh man. Well, this movie goes way over the top for those numbers then. Blows it out of the water. This is totally rated R, which is interesting too. If you look back at Predator 2 was the first to get the NC-17 rating. So maybe he was taking it as a challenge. I mean, honestly, like it wasn't based on language for Predator 2.
2 was rated NC-17?
Yes, it was the first one to get the new NC-17 rating when it came out.
I don't think that's right.
I don't think that's right. I think that was
okay. I will attribute that quote
Henry
because I found
June.
it as I was doing my research for this movie. But it was one of them, and I will find the place where it says it was the first. But
copy.
You're right.
Thing
Actually, it says that they initially gave it an NC-17, so they made some cuts to get it to R.
Oh, so the first one that was a release was Henry and June, I think.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So Shane Black then probably was taking it as a little bit of a, what can I do? Now, it wasn't for language that they did that. That was for the graphic violence at the time, but the NC-17 rating was new at that time too. So, but I totally got the sense of what you're saying there, Andy, in that his way to kind of make sure this was an R rating was, let's just keep saying the F word.
Yeah, that's what I felt.
I didn't think it needed
Super
so much of it because, I mean, the gore was pretty on point. You can't have, I mean, that level of gore and dismemberment, sort of center frame can't be in any kind of PG-13. I think a lot of the, F-bombs and stuff also it's what I call nervous improv. When you let the actors off their leash, sometimes they will, in order to be the biggest cock on the walk of that scene or to match sort of the level of it, a lot of people that aren't comfortable with improv will just throw in
an F-bomb.
F-bombs. We'll just curse. And especially with Sterling K. Brown, who I thought his character was nonsensical. I loved Sterling K. Brown in this movie because he was having so much F-bomb fun, but he in particular used a lot of F-bombs that when edited together became really clunky because it was right on someone else using it. No one would script it that way.
But he played nonsensical in a way that it felt like it was a take. I mean, honestly, like at some point, I ended up liking him more than some of the other characters because he went all the way with it.
Sure. I agree with that.
Well, and now his relationship. So this is to get into the story piece of it too. We haven't talked much about story yet, but the idea here is that the predator that we know is coming back to bring the humans on Earth a ultimate weapon to stop the predator invasion from these evolved hybrid predators. And the interesting thing that I think needs to be examined in this story is that everyone that is a human is working for the continued living of the human race, but they are antagonists through the majority of this movie. And at some point they decide to work together, but only begrudgingly. And through most of the movie, they're trying to kill each other for reasons that are kind of technical and just based on a lack of communication. Did you guys think it was interesting when they chose to fight together? And could they maybe have started fighting together for the betterment of Earth much earlier?
I would have chosen earlier, if only because when they all decide to team together after the predator gives them the time advantage, which I like that phrase,
right,
for a head start, that's where the entire movie just became a big toilet for me, was after that scene. And so it's tough for me to, but yeah, so I would have wanted that feeling of let's all, get together and put on a show. I would have liked that earlier because there's just a lot of wheel spinning.
Well, I think they're still shooting each other like less than 5 minutes before that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that was my thing, is that, you have these moments where they're taking hostages, they're handcuffing people and they're threatening each other with death, when really what they really want is they could have at any point just said, we're here to make sure that everybody survives.
And it felt to me like it was an additional level of kind of that nonsensical storytelling. We've got to create some human antagonists as well. So let's make this happen this way. And it's just like, why is the government saying, okay, there's an alien loose, but let's kill her because she knows too much? Okay, maybe keep her around.
Have you watched movies and TV shows?
Yeah, and these are the sorts of things that are dumb. It's dumb writing. It is terrible. Exactly. And Shane Black is better than that, Steve.
Yeah, okay, but it depends what he's going for. And to me, it reminded me of Your Next. where it's like you think you're getting one thing, but it's paying homage and reflecting other things, and it's catering to.
But your next was smart. Your next elevated it, not dumbed it down in order to make a doc.
This is Shane Black making a movie for 14-year-olds, and he does an exceedingly great.
But it's an R-rated movie.
Yes, exactly. And how many R-rated movies did you see before you were 17?
None. I was too busy in church.
I mean, he wrote Lethal Weapon, and to me, this fits with Lethal Weapon, where it's like we've got guys being manly, poor role models, really, but no, this is what's fun, and it's guys being guys and being mouthy and cursing and blowing stuff up. What else do you want when you're 14? And to me, that's what it is. And as far as complexity, no, you don't need that, because this is just pure popcorn entertainment, something you can just put on, and it's, for lack of a better term, mindless violence. You've got government doing stuff. Why? I don't care. I don't need a reason. I just know they're the government and they do things. And you've got, a bunch of veterans that have, made weird decisions in life. They're sort of the outcasts. They band together, and they're going to be the guys that, stick it to the government because they're going to fight for what's, to protect one of their own and family. Oh, there are so many plot holes and issues and all of that. But I had so much fun with this because it just took me on a ride.
I think that's fair, Steve, but I want to say that I think in general, we tend to make the argument at times on this show that some of our writers that we like the most are on purpose making movies that aren't executed well to appeal to certain audiences. And I think that at some level, if we're objective enough, we realize that those are just not their best movies. And that's what I think is the point here, is that I think it's a good movie, and I think you want to say those 14, 15-year-olds, they're going to love it. When The Predator is their first rated R movie, I think they're going to love it too. But in general, it doesn't hold water to the original. I mean, it doesn't compare in that way to what is really good about those other Predator movies that we liked.
Well, and to that point, I mean, I will, agree that there were a lot of laughs coming from the theater. I saw a 7:00 Friday night show, and there were a lot of laughs in the theater. A lot of people really seemed to be enjoying it. And yeah, maybe I'm the old man on his lawn now, and I am going to have a harder time getting into these sorts of films. And maybe there is an audience for it, and they're going to really love it. But for my money, if I'm going in to watch a follow-up to the Predator films, I mean, sadly, I'm at a point where I'm not expecting any of them to be good anymore, because none of them have been, except for the first one. But I was hoping that this one would be because of the Shane Black connection. And I think more than anything, I personally am just disappointed because I was holding Shane at maybe too high of standards, and I don't feel he delivered what I was looking for.
I laughed a lot more in this film than I did in the Happy Time Murders.
I rolled my eyes about the same amount of times.
Yeah, no, this movie, it didn't know what its best jokes were. There were a lot of jokes that worked and a ton that really hung out to dry in the editing. Like, it was expecting, this is a laugh line, and everyone just sort of stands around, and my audience was dead silent for some of those.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I felt, and I will say, so my audience, I was laughing much more than most of the people in my audience for the stuff that I found. So,
come on, get to the choppers.
No,
yeah, that was fun.
Homage.
Yeah, but that's an homage. That I wouldn't pull that out as great Shane Black comedy writing. All he's doing is throwing an homage at you.
Yeah,
right.
Well,
give me a good joke that he wrote.
The joke that I do like, and I do want to recount this, is when they talk about the Predator. So the self-effacing joke about the Predator.
That was my favorite part too.
Olivia Munn first gets into to see the Predator on the table, and Sterling K. Brown says, we're calling it the Predator because it hunts, it finds people that it likes, it hunts them down, and it seems to like it. And she says, well, that's not a predator, that's a sports hunter. It sounds like you're talking a lot more like a bass fisherman. That I found funny and clever, and that kind of stuff in this movie I think worked.
Yes,
that actually felt like
Shane Black to me,
right?
Or
right.
maybe
so
like Kevin Williamson. Like, I like that kind of reflection on things.
I did,
but there
too.
was
that was exactly,
or the joke. What, you're going to kill me now with a trank gun? And he says, well, yeah, you kidnapped my son. And then he shoots him in the eye with the trank gun. I liked that kind of stuff. I like
when the kid, the adorable Jacob Tremblay was out trick or treating, and they do that brutal where the shoulder gun blows up that entire house. That's the anarchic spirit that I wanted so much for this movie. When that came, I was like, oh, a new lease on life. This movie's insane. And then it turned out not to be insane. It was just kind of stupid and lazy.
Right. Like, and then they shoot the dog in the head, and the dog is like their best friend. What was that all about?
Why was the point of the dogs? All he does is eat grenades. He just barfs. He barfs up Deus Machina. Wait, what's it? What's the
Deus Ex Machina?
Deus Ex Machina. That's all he does.
Yeah.
Then, of course, everyone immediately knows what it is, even if it's alien technology, and immediately knows how to use it. We have to talk about logic jumps at some point.
Well, she threw the grenade for him to go fetch earlier. It's not like he's just carrying around grenades in his stomach to barf.
Oh, that was a grenade? Oh,
yeah,
no,
she threw the grenade for him to go
I
catch.
didn't know that the first time.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I thought it was just a rock. It wasn't filmed great. Okay.
No. Yes, I agree.
There was a lot of points where some of the directing in this, I felt like Shane Black's direction, especially with some of the action, was a little sloppy. Sometimes during the big fighting, when people were getting killed in particular, like I had a hard time going, well, who was that they just got killed so quickly?
Totally
and I
unceremonious.
Totally didn't get to really get any time with that, except for the two jokesters that was like two of the most annoying characters. Oh man!
I actually have a question to ask about that.
Thomas Jane. Wow.
When we were there, and Sterling K. Brown's joke death was almost unwatchable, literally unwatchable. I still don't exactly know what happened. He turned the wrong way and got his head in the way of his dumb-looking shoulder thing. That was just really sloppy directing. But I do want to bring up that scene of the Thomas Jane and Keegan-Michael Key's death scene. Do you want to do that now, or do you want to do it a little bit later?
The American Harikiri scene?
Right, yeah.
Let's shoot each other?
Because they had been involved in a friendly fire incident before, they literally killed each other with friendly fire. I get that. Yeah. That's fun. Do you guys believe that...
Choose a different adjective, please.
That was sexy. Do you guys believe...
well done.
Thanks. That he was trying to be poignant or make a joke with that whole... You thought so too?
I think he was trying to make a joke.
Trying to make a joke.
Everybody? All right. Fair enough. Then I take it back. I saw it with 3 people, and we were split down the half. I think he was trying to make a weirdly, somewhat poignant moment with the music, with the filming. I get that when you're making a joke, you play it really straight, but he didn't sell the joke for me, and I got embarrassed when the whole audience started laughing because I was afraid that he thought that was watching 2 heroes go out in a cool way. But apparently I'm very alone, and
well, no, but the point, I think you're making a good point, because those kind of things happen a lot in this movie with those. I mean, what we're talking about now is a litany of unceremonious deaths of characters that we either choose to invest in early on in the movie or we choose to disregard, but they're part of the story. And that kind of confusion, I think, makes why this movie is so uneven, and that why there's it's a very difficult and disorienting tempo.
The tone
as you're
shifts
going through.
In the tempo.
Yeah. How do you deal with that? I think it could be governed by your theater, right? I mean, if everybody laughs at that scene, it becomes a joke. If they don't, if everyone sweeps into it, and I think that's unfortunate for the story, really. One other joke that I really liked and laughed a lot is when Olivia Munn was about to get off the bus, and everybody's like, "We'll catch you, we'll catch you, we'll catch you," and then they walked away, and she fell.
Yeah,
that was funny.
Because it's great too, because we start talking about how the Merc characters, all the war crime insane guys, have all gone through these terror things, and we're talking about how tough they are throughout the whole movie. But again, they're threatened by this alien force that is terrifying, and they don't know how to react. So it made them very human in that moment to be like, "I'm terrified. I'll help you, but I'm not really going to help you." And then I don't know. It was funny.
Mm-hmm.
So part of that, of being those soldiers of fortune, right? Harkening back to the original movie, is all the crazy macho posturing that we get from them. What about Boyd Holbrook? I don't even know who Boyd Holbrook is. Can you guys school me on who he is? Quinn McKenna, the lead of this movie.
Wasn't he in Logan?
He was in Logan, yeah.
Oh, was he the bad guy in Logan?
Yeah, with the mechanical hand.
Which I remember liking him in this. For me, I thought he was a terrible choice. I would have wanted any of the other characters to be the lead. He was just
I came into this thinking Sterling K. Brown was going to be the lead.
Yeah, I would have loved that because he was having so much fun. It was, I get the idea of like this macho, never really ruffled, line dropping kind of person, but he was so unmagnetic and so not interesting that I just thought he really brought the movie down quite a bit. I never cared about him. I was never on his side, unfortunately.
Well, and he also made it hard to really, have a protagonist that carried the film well. And so, yeah, I agree. I really didn't like him. And then by the time you're getting to the ending and it's like, okay, wait a minute. So now is Jacob Tremblay the protagonist? It started getting into confusing territory because it's the whole McKenna thing, but it's not really. But I liked Jacob Tremblay a lot more than I liked Boyd Holbrook. So it was a terrible choice for a lead.
Yeah, the kid was great. The kid was awesome. And that whole red herring about which McKenna is the real warrior is what the super predator says, I think is an interesting twist in the middle of the movie, but I totally got it well before they revealed it to us.
Because who's going to pick Quinn McKenna? He's the worst.
Right. Well, and so now the other folks on his squad, Nebraska, Trevante Rhodes is the actor there. I liked him as a character. I couldn't stand the fact that in every scene, regardless of what they were doing, he was smoking.
It was,
and they used
ridiculous.
It as they brought it at the end to be that was his thing, but it just didn't. It was really forced. And I don't have a problem with him with a character smoking, but there were scenes where he's running and he's literally doing what he can to hold a bouncing cigarette in his mouth, which I just think is just too much.
They're always just lit. It's also kind of sloppily done. It's just like light the cigarette action. Yeah. Like when he's staking people out, when he's sitting next to the kid, that was his thing.
Yeah.
And to me, it felt like that was Shane Black, sticking it to, smoking in movies. Like, I feel like Shane Black
really
does things like that. Yeah. Because he just seems like the sort of guy who's going to do that. And so he's like, I'm going to have a character who smokes all the time.
That seems like too smart, right? Or so we're giving him that much credit?
No, because it's so sloppily done. Because it's so insane. I mean, maybe it seems to exist as an FU to no smoking campaigns because it's so sloppily done. It's so ridiculous how often he has a cigarette. It's gotta be. If it's not some sort of parody, then it's just really lazy writing, directing, and editing, I think.
So this walks the line between mistake and purpose, right? I mean, honestly, like it would be great for us to know about this, that if he was purposefully parodying something like that. But it's really hard to know with this character who's not the lead. He's very important. And I actually liked him as a character. Other than the cigarette thing, I thought he was interesting. And what he brought in his backstory, I thought was interesting too, to the story. But this particular aspect of this character that isn't a lead, it's kind of the right-hand man of our lead. And eventually, ends up dying. It seems like, how can it be that important of a point? It feels much more conceptually a mistake than a purpose. Other people, Keegan-Michael Key, we just did a movie about him earlier this week, Steve. We did a trailer rewind about Don't Think Twice. This is a very different role for him, but he is making a lot of jokes.
Yes, it's easier to laugh at him in this movie than in Don't Think Twice.
That is true. I didn't dislike him. I like him pretty much in everything that he is. I didn't think the character was important to the story other than the sort of Deus Ex Machina that's being used for the jokes for what's happening in the story. So I like him because I think he's a compelling actor, but I didn't need the character.
He would have been the comic relief, except that Shane Black seemed to think that everyone was kind of the comic relief.
Good point.
That's where it just gets sort of spread out. And that's why one of the reasons that I think he could be excised from this movie is because everyone was sort of quirky and weird.
Olivia Munn, I think was great. I like her. I'm kind of biased. I like her in pretty much everything she does. I was super happy with her sort of candor, as you mentioned, everybody being comic. Her jokes, I thought, were generally some of the ones that were better than the other ones, probably because of her delivery. How did you feel about Olivia's performance here?
For taking the movie for what it is, no one was given a whole lot to work with. I mean, really, there's,
you can just say you didn't like it.
No. I think, I have to say I'm disappointed because we start the film with her really she's sort of our, audience surrogate getting pulled out and taken to the lab and all of that. And so she's the scientist. And then ultimately, as well, as I will say, in the 80s, it's, everything's going to devolve down to the simplest thing in action and fighting. So rather than her giving her a lot of smart things to do, she disappears for a significant period of time and then, magically shows up with the little invisibility, cloaking thing.
That no one taught her how to use.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So there wasn't, I think
she was brought in as the genius scientist, but
right. Yes. I enjoyed her earlier on. I think she had more interesting things to do earlier on. And then there just wasn't a place for her in the story once we get to the free for all in the forest. Disappointed. Couldn't find better things, but that's not the type of movie that I think was trying to be
I
made.
appreciated that, especially if we're talking about 80s, it didn't treat her as a quote unquote girl. I enjoy that it really put guns in her hand, even though that trank gun looked so fake and weird.
Yes.
She at some point, I mean, she is a scientist and then later completely knows how to work all the machine guns and she's a great shot.
Yes.
Whatever. Putting all that aside, I'm just glad that she wasn't like the foil, like I'm uptight and in high heels or like the joke, kind of thing where
we didn't have a lot of
everyone has to just
damsel.
protect her.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. She wasn't the screaming damsel of like, oh no, this dog's coming to get me and I'm screaming, help me, save me. Yeah,
I appreciated that very much.
More assertive than yes.
And she's an incredibly fast runner because at the end, after the ship blows up, she runs across an entire forest in about 4 minutes. So good work.
Awesome.
Good work, Olivia.
I think we should also mention the controversy that's come out, and maybe we shouldn't even call it a controversy so much that has happened with this film, in that there was a scene cut from it because Olivia found out that one of the actors that was brought to the movie by Shane Black, actually had been accused of sexual assault on a 14-year-old. And so they ended up having the scene cut. And there's been a lot of interviews about how it happened. Initially, Olivia was really out on her own making this point, and that she had felt that really she made this happen by calling the studio and getting it cut, and that she had felt that kind of her cast and crew were kind of leaving her out on her own on it. She found a lot of support in her family, but in new interviews that I see people showing up to stand by her in this, Keegan-Michael Key in particular, as someone that I've seen as talking about their support for her in this action. So I found myself, knowing about that controversy, I found myself searching for where it would happen early in the film, but eventually I just kind of let it go and was just watching.
I had a guess, actually, because I don't know what the scene was, but she's kind of one of the only characters that before she's in the thick of things doesn't really get an introduction.
Yeah.
They just, a bunch of nameless people pick her up at a dog park.
Right.
My guess is, if I had to guess, it's that she had a cool scene proving her coolness, and maybe the fact that she knows how all alien technology works and guns or whatever, that scene maybe happened at the dog park would be my only guess.
It's very possible, because what I've heard about the content of the scene is that this person was hitting on her in particular. And that was part of the funny. That is probably, well, I shouldn't say that's probably, that is part of the reason why it was so distasteful for her and such a terrible thing to have happen, is that she had to act in a scene where someone who had been involved in sexual abuse was then coming onto her too, and it made her feel really gross and really terrible, and because she had no prior knowledge of this stuff before they did it for the movie. And I get that. I totally understand that from her, and I'm glad that that her protest and her standing up for herself was effective.
Yeah, and it's frustrating that even like people like Shane Black, I get it, it's his friend, but he was against her really to begin with, and was just like, I get it, some people might disapprove. He has since offered apologies
good up
the wazoo, because otherwise I think people would be shunning him as well. But it's one of those things you don't mess with, I think.
The other guys in the crew, we had Thomas Jane, we've talked about, the Tourette's guy, which I found to be terribly unfortunate. The Alfie Allen, the Lynch, the Entropy guy, only had one line about his character. And then you've got Nettles, the Bible guy. In general, they weren't really developed characters. They felt like kind of one-offs for jokes.
To your point, at the end, when he puts all the totems on that little handkerchief, the only one I was able to identify right away was the cigarettes. I was like, I don't know who any of this belongs to otherwise.
The just to your point about Thomas Jane's character, I didn't know this, but apparently Shane Black has Tourette's, and so he purposely wrote it into the character because of that, and he just wanted to make it something that was more prevalent, I guess, in storytelling, so more people kind of saw it. I don't know.
Maybe they should put that note in the opening credits so that we're aware when we're watching the movie, so that we can make it. No, my point is that I think I get it that he wrote it in there, but it really feels
the other characters treat him as a
jokes.
joke.
Yeah.
So what's the point? Yeah.
I don't know that it accomplishes what he's trying to do there. What do you guys think?
Well, no, because the child that's on the spectrum turns out to be sort of a brilliant hero. The guy with Tourette's is a butt of a joke for most of the film. So I don't think that I don't know how that helps.
No, I don't. I would have thought the exact same thing, that like it was a kind of a poor way to write this character. And then I learned that, and then it made me like, wow, really? That's how he chose to address it. Okay. I don't know what to say.
Bold, and I still feel it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I guess my point about those three characters is that they really didn't stick out. I think it's interesting that you mentioned the thing about the handkerchief, Tom. The entropy guy, when he died like instantly as soon as they got into battles.
Yeah.
So there was no reason to even introduce him to us at any point. All
and
the
he's the
cutaways
Game of
that we
Thrones
saw
guy,
of him,
right?
Yeah.
The Game of Thrones guy gets a dumb death, and Boyd Holbrook lives the entire time. I don't understand this movie.
Right. Jake Busey's in the lab. Tell me if I'm wrong. Is Jake Busey also the guy who was in Contact?
Yes.
That was the albino? So I find that really interesting, because that's everything that I was projecting was like, oh, this guy's going to do something really bad. Because all I could think of was Contact.
Blow it up. That's funny. What's interesting about Jake Busey's character is he is actually playing the son of Keyes from the first movie, who was played by Gary Busey, who is Jake Busey's father.
That's kind of cool. Yeah. I like that. And you know that the middle school that he went to, that the kid that Jacob Tremblay went to, it was Lawrence Gordon Middle School. They made a big point of showing that when they went that he's the producer of the original Predator movie. So we talk about the homage in this movie. There's a lot of it about hearkening back.
I didn't pay attention to the name of the school. I was just, looking at it as the sight gag of, parents and STDs.
Yep.
I missed that.
That was the first quote unquote joke of the movie, was that parents and students, but parents and STDs welcome.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, that's what that. Oh my goodness! Yeah, I didn't even read that because they were so prominent on that sign. I was like, "Who's Lawrence Gordon?"
Yeah, I went, "Ha!" That was my reaction out loud in the movie. I went, "Ha!"
Because you're not 14, Tom. You're not. 14.
I know. That's a sexual disease. All right.
All I was focusing on was that it was like pre-Halloween, and I'm like, oh, here's Shane Black and his Halloween, or it's his holiday. No, it's not Christmas, but it's still a holiday.
It's not Christmas. Yeah, exactly. I thought I was waiting for Christmas, and I was surprised when we got Halloween. Yeah.
Was the music? The themes were the same as the original one, right?
Correct.
Like when we see the chopper, that's the original music, right?
Yes. Yeah, Alan Silvestri's main theme is still the main theme here.
I only noticed it when it was really loud and really kind of intense, which was kind of the first whole third of the movie. I almost felt as though that it was written into the screenplay, that like while Rory McKenna is going around his shop and playing with alien technology, that they really needed dramatic music to make us feel how terrible it was, or dangerous, I guess is the thing. So I found that super interesting, but I only noticed when it was the old theme, and I really like, so Henry Jackman did the music for this. I really like Henry Jackman's music in a lot of movies, and I didn't notice anything different than the original themes. Did you guys find anything other than those points about music that were important?
I didn't. I do like Henry Jackman here and there, but yeah, I didn't feel like he brought something new to this one. But I was glad that he at least continued some of the previous themes from the original film.
Yeah, and I didn't notice. I mean, I don't remember knowing the original themes, but I definitely recognized it when I saw the movie. So I thought that was kind of a good way of doing it.
That's cool.
In terms of final thoughts, are there anything else that you guys want to say about this before we try to figure out where it goes in our mix of movies?
Like I said, the theater I was in seemed to be enjoying it for the most part. I think there were a few people in it like me who are kind of rolling their eyes through most of it. But I think a lot of the audience was still enjoying it. So I do think that it will find its home. I don't know if it's going to be a huge success or if it's just going to be a moderate success, but I expect it to still be a success in the theaters. I will say I did find it interesting. I actually walked in a few minutes late into the IMAX screening, and so as soon as it ended, I jumped over into a regular screening that was just getting started, and I was so surprised by the noticeable picture difference between the two, because it's a total IMAX theater. It's very much a regular movie theater that just has better sound, basically. But the picture looked so much better. It was crisper. It was, the blacks were, I mean, that's really what I noticed. The blacks were just so much richer than the other presentation. So
when it was stretched, are you saying better on IMAX or better on the regular?
Better on the IMAX screen. It was just interesting. I mean, I was honestly surprised because I hate going to IMAX movies because it costs me so much more. It just happened to be the time that worked for me. And so when I walked into the other theater, I wasn't expecting to really see the difference, but it really was quite apparent.
All right. Well, if that's what we have to talk about, I think it's time that we rank this one.
Flick chart, time to hunt the predator, flick chart time.
Very nice. Check out the entire Film Board filmography ranked at flickchart.com/TNR Filmboard. When you get there, you can create a tournament style stack ranking of your own and see how your big screen proclivities compare to ours. Where do we start, Andy?
All right. First up, we have The Predator, or Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice.
Oh,
The Predator.
The Predator.
Oh man,
The Predator.
Yeah, I'll still pick The Predator. I don't know, Wonder Woman.
Who's Martha?
Yeah, it's a rough one. The Predator or Beirut. Oh man, I'll still
Beirut.
Pick
The Predator.
The Predator.
The Predator.
And
We got a tie.
Steve and Tom, do some Rochambeau.
1, 2, 3.
Paper. Scissors. We got to keep going.
You just go without counting? Okay.
Yeah, we just
Start over, Andy.
You just kind of go with the same beat until
do one more count, and then I won't mess up. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll do it counting down. 3, 2, 1.
Paper.
Okay,
I
so
win.
Beirut wins.
Woo! You're welcome, John Hamm.
All right, The Predator or Ant-Man? Absolutely Ant-Man.
Oh, Ant-Man, yes.
Abstain. That movie is made of my nightmares.
The Predator or Snowden? I'll take Snowden.
I will
Abstain.
Yes, I will take Snowden. Yes.
Snowden wins.
The Predator or Kingsman? The Golden Circle.
Kingsman.
Oh,
Any of the
Kingsman.
The Golden
Yes.
Circle.
I think I'll say Kingsman: The Golden Circle as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I will.
I didn't like it.
I didn't either. The Predator or Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets?
Oh, that's a
I'll go
good
with
one.
Valerian.
I think I'll go with Valerian too.
Predator.
I enjoyed Valerian so much more than I ever would have expected.
We got a tie.
So Tom and Andy, you guys do Rochambeau.
All right.
Oh, Andy, you're good at this.
1, 2, 3.
Rock.
Paper.
Scissors.
Oh.
Okay, so that means Tommy won, so that's The Predator.
Am I really good at this game?
Well, that lands
Holy
The
cow.
Predator at 35 on our chart. 35 out of 73.
So right about the middle.
Right in the middle.
So
That makes sense.
It's at a 52%.
And it's really weird for me for the Letterboxd ranking, because I see that it's a good movie. I'm ranking it a 3 stars, but it's a not like for me. I didn't like it, but I think I still go back to what you're saying, Steve. Those 14 and 15-year-olds, or even the people in their young 20s who, again, aren't going to remember or care about the original Predator like I do, they're probably going to see this and they're going to see it as like in the Marvel movie vein, and it's going to kickstart a new Predator idea and other things, and they might like this movie. The stuff that I laughed at, they might like in a way that I definitely did not. So it's a 3 and a dislike for me.
Interesting. Sorry, I keep talking. Tommy, shut up. Let the
Tommy,
show
how many stars, Tommy? How many stars? And did you like
2 stars dislike.
I'm 3 stars and a like.
I am 1.5 stars and a dislike.
Woo! Shots fired.
It was bad. It was just plain up bad.
No. Oh my God.
Yes.
So that's
Okay,
that's
so-
an average of 2.375. So yeah, landed 2.5 and not alike.
Got it. That's where it sits for us. Where do we go from here? Next month is October. We talked about a movie to see, and we saw lots of different things that we thought would be interesting in October. So we're going to kind of hold off a little bit. The things that we have our eyes on right now are all happening the weekend of October 12th. That's kind of where we're prioritizing right now. There's 2 movies we're interested in. We might see First Man, which is the story of Neil Armstrong, or we might go see, is it the Battle or no? Is it the Battle of the El Royale?
Bad Times at the El
Bad
Royale.
Times at the El Royale. Those 2 movies are the ones that have our ears right now. So if you are hearing this and you have a particular choice out of those 2, let us know, because we'd be interested to hear what you think too. We're kind of interested in both in totally different ways. So that's where we're going to look in October for where we're going. Also coming out is the movie about the plagiarist with Melissa McCarthy. Andy, what's the name of that one?
Can You Ever Forgive Me?
Can You Ever Forgive Me? Yeah, so that might be interesting to us too. It's a little bit more of an art film, but those are the movies we talked about for October. So we want to hear from you guys too. Andy, on the main show, on the Next Real Weekly show, what you guys are working on the 68 crime series, right? How did you guys get started on that? What's going on with 68?
Well, we're celebrating 50th anniversaries of films and of franchises. So we've done 2001, the Odyssey films. So we did the Planet of the Apes original 5 films, and now we're jumping into crime films. So it's been an interesting. It'll be an interesting series to cover. We're looking forward to that one.
Awesome.
That's cool. I didn't know that was the reason. That makes sense. There's going to be a lot of good movies in that bunch. And I want to remind everyone out there listening that we gather with the Next Reel community on our Discord channel about a half an hour before every film board movie to chat a bit about how much or how little, like tonight, fun we had at the movie. And we do a little pre-show pep fest with all of you wonderful folks as well. Check out thenextreel.com for details on how you can get an online invite to the soiree.
Not only that, JJ, but we should also throw out that people can join our Discord conversations for free anytime. They can jump into the conversation in the Discord community.
That's right. And that's not talking to us like that, but on that we have message boards, and we're talking about lots of interesting different things about people's favorite movies, different reviews that people are seeing on TV, on movies, anywhere that you're finding entertainment. We have cool conversations going on about that as well.
Absolutely.
Gracias, danke, and taxomiket to every single person out there around the world that can hear me. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Say goodnight, Steve Sarmento.
Hondo.
See you soon, Tommy Handsome.
Is that better?
Nope. Sleep well, Andy Nelson.
Good night.
The big group will gather again in October. In the meantime, enjoy Andy and Pete's trip through crime. See what I did there? Trip through crime. Time, right? Anniversary. At the next reel, when the movie ends, our conversation begins. Till next.
How does it? Oh wait, hold on.
So
That's closer.
you're snoring. That's what that is. You're snoring. Okay.
Well, how would you guys do it?
Hi, it's me, the predator.
How would you guys do it?
Like this.
Just
Like this.
Oh,
It's
well,
mechanical.
that's immediately better than what I just went out on the.
See, you said, you asked, how would you guys do it? I showed you.
I should stop asking questions. Do it again. Okay, cool.